Hey, welcome to my YouTube canal. Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Nena. Thanks for clicking to watch this video. Should you still move to Sweden in 2025? Today I'll be breaking down the good, the bad, and the ugly of living or moving to Sweden. Let's get into it. Can we talk about how hard it is for internationals to find jobs in Sweden? Even the so-called menial jobs, and coupled with the current harsh economic situation in Sweden and all over the world, it has become even more difficult. The unemployment rate of Sweden stands at 10.4% in 2025. This is pretty large compared to previous years. You can see this chart showing the different unemployment rates. Apart from in 2021, where it reached its peak, this year we are seeing very high levels of unemployment and more people being forced into the labor market. This is one of the biggest struggles of moving to Sweden, and even with all of your experience, you may still find it difficult. I tell you, Sweden can make you question your experience, your education, your certifications, and everything that you thought you knew. These days, many companies prefer Swedish-speaking candidates. Online applications rarely ever work. You need to network, and networking is difficult because the Swedes are not so open to communicating with people that they don't know. So you need to network, you need to follow up, you need to reach out to people on LinkedIn, you need to try to get a referral. And being someone who is new and not used to the system, this may be especially difficult and even worse for people requiring work permit sponsorship. Well, some industries still have a high demand, like the IT and the healthcare industry, but to really thrive in the healthcare industry, you need good knowledge of Swedish. So if you're moving to Sweden, don't just rely on sending out applications. You need to network, possibly learn the language, and have a backup plan. But guess what? Sometimes all of this even don't work. You have to pray for grace and a miracle. If you're enjoying this video so far, please like this video, drop a comment, let's interact, and also subscribe to my channel. Now let's move on to immigration. If you watched my previous video, I talked about how Sweden was tightening its immigration rules. You can watch it here or check the link in the description so you get context or more details about what I'm about to share. Sweden is tightening its immigration rules in 2025. For example, the threshold of salary requirement to apply for a work permit was recently, some years back, moved to up to 28,400 Swedish crowns. Now you now need a permanent residence or citizenship to even apply for small jobs that otherwise would have sponsored work permits for individuals. And even for those who have jobs, some live every day with the fear of losing their job and having just 3 months to look for another job or risk being kicked out of Sweden. In addition, Sweden has or is planning to increase the wait time for citizenship from 5 years to 8 years or more. This has not been implemented yet, but it's going to go into effect possibly in June of 2026. Basically, it's harder to move to Sweden and even harder to stay in Sweden. So your good security will be having a solid job offer and a good long-term plan. Now let's talk about the cost of living in Sweden. Man, Sweden is expensive. I think one of the most expensive countries in the whole of Europe. The inflation rate as at February 2025 was said to be 2.9%, and just in December it was just 1.4%. You can imagine how vast or the difference in the prices of goods and services between just a space of 2 months. Rent in Stockholm ranges from 10,000 crowns to over that in big cities like Stockholm, Göteborg. The taxes are high. 30% or way more than that. Yes, I know you can argue that the government actually does put to good use these taxes. Yeah. Sweden is great, but if you do not have a stable income, it can be financially stressful for you. Now for the last part of the bad part. Let's talk about language barrier. I call it learn Swedish or die. I'm joking, but learn Swedish or you struggle. But if you plan to live here long term and survive in Sweden, then you need to learn the language. Even I have been guilty of saying this in my very old video. I'm like, everybody speaks Swedish. Yes, that still holds true. But for context's sake, in 2025, Swedish is becoming a big requirement in the job market. Swedes do speak good English, but they are more comfortable speaking Swedish. These days, most jobs require Swedish. In fact, it's even written in some ads. excellent spoken and written Swedish. Accessing government, banking, or healthcare services are possible in English, but so much easier with Swedish. It may be harder to integrate without the language. Sometimes your bosses and colleagues in the office may be more open to you if you speak the language. Now let's talk about the good stuff. And this good stuff starts when you finally find a good job. Work-life balance is amazing, heavenly, top-notch, best in the world, I just say. Many jobs have flexible hours. You have a long period of vacation, up to 20 or even 25 days or more. Sweets value personal time. Not a lot of pressure in the workplace. Do your job, do what you're supposed to do. Nobody is marking you or checking you or or policing you about, except you have a bad boss. Parental leave is generous, both for the man and the woman. Public transportation is reliable in big cities. And yes, Sweden does take care of its people. So if you have a permanent residence or a residence where you pay taxes or a citizenship, then you have access to lots of social benefits. There's free education for EU citizens. That means if you move here and you have kids who are up to university education, they can go to university basically for nothing. Healthcare is almost totally free. When you talk about opportunities, there's still a high demand for people in tech and in IT. There are lots of possibilities in the sustainability and renewable energy sector, and startups are actually growing a lot, especially in the city of Stockholm. So I give my final verdict. Is it still worth moving to Sweden in 2025? I say yes if you're in a high demand field, and also if you're willing to learn the language and build a large network. I say no if you think moving here guarantees you a job. It does not. If you don't plan to learn Swedish at all, this may limit your opportunities. Sweden is still a great place, but you should have a plan and realistic expectations. So what do you think? Do you still plan to move to Sweden after hearing all of this, or you're unmoved by anything that I've said at all? Or are you already in Sweden and considering going somewhere else due to the changes and the tough job market? Drop a comment, let's interact. Thank you for watching this video and sticking with me to the end. I'll see you in my next video. Hey.